26 degrees right here in the nation's capital. Humidity is at 22%. And there's unlimited visibility today, the 27th of December, 2024. We are gradually coming to the end of the year. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Kayla Megwa.
I don't know what you mean by unlimited visibility, because here in Lagos there is limited visibility. You can't go too fast, too far.
It's unlimited here. You can see as far as you want to.
Trust me, if you stand here at some spot in Lagos, your visibility is going to be limited for a bit. So you got to be very, very careful. No, in fact, no one needs to tell you not to overspeed, because you can't see beyond what you can see. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. And by the way, so okay, this morning, we're still in the southwest of Nigeria, southern part of the country. And one of those holiday spots that I'm pretty sure is busy at this time is this town in Abeokuta, this part of our Abeokuta town. Specifically talking about Olumo Rock. You know, it's a holiday spot for so many people. And I think I heard you, Kayla, say that you've been here at 1 or 2 times, right?
Yes, indeed, I have. In Abeokuta, we went for a wedding. And at some point during this wedding, they decided to show me the town. And I loved this. It's a mountain. But it's great, interesting that they call it a rock. It's actually a mountain. And of course, like I said, it's in Ogun State, Abeokuta. Good morning, Ogun State. And they told us that this was where people used to fight, used to come and hide. So it was some kind of fortress during intertribal warfare. And they said this was around the 19th century. And then there's a spirit there. The spirit is venerated, and it's called Orisha. I hope I got it correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Orisha. And then, of course, a lot of spiritualism around this place, but a massive tourist attraction. And the government took their time to actually put up these steps, so climbing it, because that day they said we were going to climb Olumo Rock. So I had my hiking sneakers on, and I was ready to hold on to stone and climb and crawl my way up there. But apparently you didn't have to. There was the staircase by the side, and then proper tour guides. I really have to give kudos to governments in the Southwest. Really, when it comes to these traditional and very revered monuments like Olumo Rock, they actually take their time to ensure that the tourism is done properly. More can be done, of course. There's always room for improvement. But really well done, really well curated. And I think the people that live in this part of Abeokuta, they are very welcoming. Maybe I think they're used to seeing strangers. That was the feeling I got. They're used to having strangers around. So, you know, very welcoming, very nice, offering you food left, right, and center. It was a fantastic experience for me. But that's our view this morning, Olumo Rock. You haven't been here?
Well, I'm neither going to confirm nor deny that question on public TV. Now, then don't make yourself assume that simply because I said that I've not been there. You need, you need more than that. But you know what's interesting about this? You know, occasionally we get to ask you, Kayla, what the names of some of those places in the north are. One of the things that I love about this one is that Olumo actually has a meaning. You know, there's those who would mistake Olumo to mean Oluomo shortened. But this actually means it's a rock that is molded by God. Olu is for God or Lord. Mo is to mold. So it's like it's a rock that was molded by God and cast here. Well, I'm pretty sure that scientists will have more to say about that. An interesting thing that we've also found out in some of the places that we've gone to all across the country is that there is always some form of mysticism, spirituality around some of these monuments. A good number of them, some would say, these are just natural monoliths, natural occurrences, but then we find a way to venerate them, which is, of course, you know, a good thing in its own right. So yes, this is one of those places you go to when you come to the southwest of Nigeria, Ogun State in particular, the capital city, Abeokuta, to be more specific. This is Olumo Rock, right here in the southwest of Nigeria.
It's quite a beautiful sight, and looking at all those people having a great time, the children, and that's another great thing about this particular site is that it is child friendly. A lot of kids can climb around, and but safety first. I know a lot of people are going to be enjoying themselves here at this Yuletide, so please be safety first and be conscious of your surroundings. It's a very nice one there, the Olumo Rock in Abeokuta in Ogun State. Lovely, lovely sight.
So, we move on now, don't we, Kayla?
I know, I don't want to, but let's move on. It's time for us to take a look at the papers this morning. Quite a lot going on. Take it away, Ayo.
The Nigerian allegations against Nigeria is on more of the newspapers we have for you this morning. Daily Trust newspaper. Niger Republic raises fresh allegations against Tinubu's government. They are baseless, according to Information Minister. Northern Group urges National Assembly to probe Chinese claims. Details on the inside pages. Nigerian Tribune has the same story, but this is the twist. Nigeria not colluding with France to destabilize Niger. FG says Niger Republic's allegations baseless. Stories on page 4 of the paper today. Front page of Daily Independent. Nigeria not conspiring with France to destabilize Niger Republic. That's from the federal government. And on the front page of Blueprint newspaper, FG to Chani. Nigeria not in alliance with France to destabilize Niger Republic. Urges Junta to focus on dialogue, shun baseless allegations. Details continue on the inside pages of the paper. New Telegraph has a not too pleasant story as its lead story today. Tragedy in Benue as herdsmen overrun 4 wards, kill 14 farmers. About 7 children, dozens missing. Troops destroy tourist camps around Beachy Hill in Katsina. Anambra police recover vehicle of kidnapped lawmaker, victim yet to be found. Details on the inside pages of New Telegraph this morning. Front page of Daily Times. Nigeria allocates 122 billion naira to boost CNG adoption. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the paper. The Vanguard newspaper has a story you'll be interested in. 2.7 trillion naira Genco's debt, endless grid collapses, ruin FG's 6,000 megawatt plan. And look at the riders, 115 transmission towers destroyed, Gencos get 20% invoice, Discos face insolvency, sector performance disappointing, that's coming from experts, and consumers are worse off, says group. Find the details of that story on the inside pages. Business Day newspaper has how Nigeria can tame inflation in 2025. Details continues on the inside pages of the paper this morning. The front page of the Guardian newspaper, 2024, the good, the bad, and hard lessons of a challenging year. It's the big story on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. And these are the papers we have for you today.
Let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper this morning, shall we? I want to talk about the Gencos. 2.7 trillion naira Genco debt, endless grid collapses, ruin the federal government's 6,000 megawatt plan. More than from page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. And the reason why this one stands out for me is because of some of the figures that have been written here. 115 transmission towers destroyed. Gencos get 20% invoice, and Discos are facing insolvency. The sector's performance is disappointing, according to experts, and consumers are worse off, is saying several groups, not just the group here, several groups are saying that we have borne the brunt of the failure of this particular sector. And the Minister of Power really needs to start getting some out-of-the-box solutions. It may be a little daunting, considering, the situations that we have to face, but that's why you are in power, okay? That's the reason why you were made minister, is because you can handle things that laymen like us will not be able to handle. So get your team together, find a way. This has now become a joke. It doesn't make any sense. These endless grid collapses. We stay making skits about it even. Someone made a joke recently, said the grid collapses every Eke market day. it's not a good reputation for the Minister of Power, and actually a slight on the federal government's plan to generate 6,000 megawatts. So if we've decided to classify consumers and put them in bands and charge them particular amounts based on the amount of electricity that they're able to get, when they don't get that electricity, what happens? You know, so a lot needs to be done, a lot of out-of-the-box thinking and solving this problem. The reason why you are in that office, like I said earlier, is because you are trusted to take the hard decisions. You're trusted to think out of the box. We want to see a solution to this power sector issue that would blow our minds. I think that maybe that's the way to think about it if you're the one handling the Ministry of Power. You know, what kind of solutions can I come up with? Or are you at a point where you say there's nothing we can do about it? Let us know quickly, because as a people, a lot is expected of you. We expect a lot from the Minister of Power in this regard. So this particular story, a call to action for the Minister of Power. And it's one that I think you should take very seriously. Your name, sir, is coming up in different areas. Whenever there's some kind of conversation about the president's cabinet, people bring up power. And that's because it's visible, you know. It's a little more difficult for you because your own, your KPI is depending on what we see. So it's a little bit more difficult for you. Some other people may not be performing as well as you may be, but we're not seeing it real time, you know. But in your case, we can judge your performance by what we see. So that is why you are in there, and I trust that with time and in the nearest future, whatever these issues are, will be sorted out. The security bit of it, the vandalization of our infrastructure, you know, and these incessant grid collapses. We don't want a repeat of that in 2025, and I hope that the Minister of Power takes that very, very seriously. That's what I'm looking at today. Page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper with more. Ayo, what are you looking at?
I'm on the front. Actually, I'm with you on that one. The electricity issue is one of the issues that I thought should have been more pronounced in the conversation that some of my colleagues had with the president recently. Electricity is, you know, the way to go. It's a major infrastructure, so one would expect that at any and every turn, 12 grid collapses, is that not the information we have in 1 year? That's quite a length of time, and the disruptions is quite telling. But I'm more interested in what's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. The Guardian newspaper has the good, the bad, and hard lessons of a challenging year. Actually, I'd like to ask you, watching us right now, to join us on X, formerly known as Twitter. What's the good, the bad, and hard lessons of 2024 for you as an individual? How did it affect you? How did it affect your industry? How did it affect your productivity? How did it affect your bottom line? It'll be good for us to know, you know, some of these things. If you would be kind enough to share with us, we would gladly put that out there, just so that both the president and the state governors will be aware that the people living within their domains, within their spheres of influence, they have, you know, challenges that need to be given attention. So then it will be good to know what part of Nigeria you're sending your message from. And of course, if you want to send us an email, please do that as well. sunrisedaily@channelstv.com. It'll be good to know, so that at least in the process of setting agenda for the new year, everyone knows what to expect. Everyone knows what is on the table, because the challenges are not just going to go away. The president has looked at some of the issues that need to be addressed, and as far as he is concerned, those issues have been addressed in the budget proposal that he sent. Well, we of course know that it's not law until the National Assembly passes it and the president signs it into law, which may wait a number of months from now. So it'll be good to know what are the outstanding issues for you. It will be good to know what are the things that need areas of necessary improvement. And because the effect of the year 2024 is right there in our faces, crescendoed, unfortunately, by the deaths as a result of stampedes, you know, this morning. So it'll be good for us to know what you think of that. That's my take this morning on the front, and my take this morning is from the front page of the Guardian newspaper, so it'll be good to know what you think as well. Kayla, it's back to you.
Indeed. Well, quite a lot going on. Get yourself a newspaper. If you don't have the habit of reading newspapers, it's nice that you tune in to listen to us. But get yourself the papers this morning. Try to find out exactly what it is that's going on. I think one recommended read I have for people today is the military's response to this unfortunate situation that happened in Sokoto that cost the lives of our brothers and sisters. You know, so if you, same newspaper, the Vanguard newspaper this morning has a more detailed explanation from the military. So that's my recommended read for you today. Get yourself a newspaper and get yourself up to date on what's going on in the country. Now, generally, as a people, we always look backwards. We try to see what the plan was and what toppled the first domino that's gotten us to where we are. Our first conversation today will be about the Nigerian dream. And we have some grandchildren here with us. It will shock you what kind of grandchildren they are. Grandchildren of people who molded the Nigerian dream at the time when it was created. Will tell us, they'll be telling us more about the legacies left by their grandparents and, of course, what they see into the future. So please, stay with us. Welcome back. Told you we had some interesting grandchildren. The first one who's joining me in the studio, Mr. Azubike Alvan Ikoku. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
The grandson of statesman, educationist, activist, and politician, Alvan Ikoku. Welcome again. What does that feel like whenever people... It must be a bit daunting, isn't it?
Exactly. Sometimes overwhelming. But...
Well, I think you share the same experience with our guest who's joining us via Zoom from, I think he's joining us from Bauchi, Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa is the grandson of our first and only Prime Minister, Mr. Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. Thank you so much for being with us on the program this morning.
Thank you.
I was just asking Mr. Alvan Ikoku if it's daunting sometimes when people say, your grandfather was Tafawa Balewa. What kind of pressure does that put on you as an individual?
Hello, good morning and Merry Christmas.
I was asking, what kind of pressure it puts on you as an individual, if you can hear me. What kind of pressure does it put on you as an individual when people remind you of who your grandfather was?
Wow, it's more of a burden because people expect too much from you. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, and I can empathize.
Yeah. It's more of a burden, and well, fine. It's a two-way feeling. One, the responsibility is expected of you. And two, perhaps the happenings in the country. So the expectations are both ways, but it's more of a burden than really the good feeling that people think you have, because too much is expected from you, and you can imagine how things are in Nigeria today. But I mean, fine. At least there is that credibility, there is that uprightness, there is that feeling of satisfaction. But it's a two-way feeling. Yes.
I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Azubike Alvan Ikoku. So that burden, were you close to your grandfather? Let's start from there. Did you sit at his feet, that sort of thing, and learn what kind of person he was and what his dream was for the country?
Interestingly, I, for one, I didn't have that privilege. My grandpa passed some 2 years before I was born.
Oh.
And, but nevertheless, I was named after him. And the burden began to grow. In my early childhood, it didn't give me the room to be as mischievous as I would have loved to be as a child, you know. So it puts, you know, kind of that burden on me. But it's something I've grown with over the years. And remarkably, I had a father, a statesman too, a national figure, who himself had some work to do at home, and he did an excellent job at inculcating those wonderful values, the discipline that defined them at the time. And his voice always resonates that just be yourself, be who you are, strive to be disciplined, and just be the best you possibly can, you know. He always knew that there would be that pressure, and that's the same experiment I've gone through over the years, you know. So right about now, the burden is minimal. I don't have any urge for mischief, childhood mischief that like I would have had back in the days. So it's somewhat exciting, and I basically would not want to let them down in any way.
I'm gonna get back to what he stood for and where you, because you are in government right now. You're the head of strategy and programs for NIMSI.
Yeah, that's where I find myself at the moment.
So let's talk a bit about his legacy, because our conversation today is about the Nigerian dream. And these were the men who put it together, so to speak, the idea of what it meant to be Nigerian and what we stood for as a people, you know, and then the way governance was carried out back then. Could you, in a few words, in as few words as possible, articulate what that Nigerian dream was and juxtapose it with our situation right now?
Oh, well, my grandpa was more of an educationist, and that's what defined his person. You know, it was education all the way through. But nevertheless, he, in being an arrowhead, a flagship for education in Nigeria, he nevertheless rose to that leadership. You know, unlike his own son, his own first son, my dad, who was more of the nationalist, of the independence fighter, and deep down in the struggle and so on and so forth. So he was more of an educationist, but because he was also a leader, a natural leader, he took a shot at politics at different times, and you know, that kind of defined his person, you know. But an astute statesman he was, I would say. Not so much because he's my grandpa, but if we began to delve into the field of education, you'd obviously find out that some of the principles he stood for and promoted, even as a member of the Nigerian Union of Teachers, was what later became the very basis of education in Nigeria. So that helped to stand him out. But his son, my dad, another interesting fellow. And I know at some point you may want to bring that up, but let me delve into a bit of history.
Okay.
They were on their path, you know, trying to define themselves. My own dad was took a shot at trade unionism, you know, partnered a great deal with Michael Imodu, of blessed memory now. And at some point, politics pitched them against one another. That's what people find very exciting. Politics pitched them against one another. And over a seat in the Eastern Nigeria House of Assembly. And it was always very, very disturbing to me as a child. So I had to accost my dad, you know, did this really happen?
Why are you fighting Grandpa?
Why are you fighting Grandpa? Did this really happen? I said, sure, you know, and I'll tell you something, son. My mom supported me. I said, really? I said, yes, my mom supported me. And all of the electioneering campaign back at home was even more interesting. Some elderly people in the village who lived at the time told me all kinds of exciting things, you know. It seemed like they went to the extreme, but of course, all they wanted was the votes of the electorate, you know, and my dad seemed to get more of that. And so he won the election. And I was like, did that affect your relationship? He said, no way. Interestingly, he played host to his dad 11 days before his dad passed on, you know, so they were best of friends. And so that also should define politics these days. People shouldn't take it too far. They say it's a game of interest, but above and beyond that interest should be the interest, national interest, the interest of the nation, you know. So whoever is able to convince the electorate the more that he or she would uphold those interests, those national interests, not personal interests, the better. And so you said I should juxtapose it with today's politics. Well, politics is going as best as it seems like it can go, but it can obviously be better in today's Nigeria. It can be better. The sad thing is that it's become very mucky and and very extreme. You know, we are perpetually living in very tense conditions. At the peak of electionary campaign, that is kind of needless. You know, we are one another's brothers, regardless of where we come from. You know, and I personally get disturbed and offended when people ask me, where are you from? Where else will I be from? I'm Nigerian, you know. I don't have to be from a certain ethnic nationality, you know. Some insist that that defines your person, but regardless of that, I think I am Nigerian, and I would like to remain such.
I want to be able to get Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa's views on, because your father was our first and only well, your grandfather, I beg your pardon, was our first and only prime minister. And I remember being a kid and watching your grandfather and his accent. My goodness, he didn't look like his voice at all, you know. So you would see this man with a turban, and then he would speak, and you'd be like, oh my goodness. And then, you know, delving into who he was and the struggle for the independence that we have. Talk to us a bit about your views on your grandfather's legacy, and if that dream he had for Nigeria is playing itself out today.
Well, thank you for that. I was equally gone some few years after he died, but I've heard and read so many things about him. And thank you about that. His pronation is excellent. I wish I could speak like him, but I mean, like him. He was an English teacher. He was also an educationist, a disciplinarian, and a traditional man. Number one, he's traditional. He's always been traditional since then. So, I mean, their kind of Nigeria then was totally different. There were people who grew up together, most of them schooled together. And they were friends even before they went into politics. So they knew each other very well. And, you know, being some of us who early educationists then in the North, it was easier for them to group and then come together and start forming some group. One, the group they formed initially was the Nigerian Mutanen Arewa. It was purely a cultural political organization before it even became a party. So they have had their own piece of activism, even when they were tutors in school. So that shaped him. And then his traditional inclination also was so rooted into him, because he knows that everything is local. Politics and almost everything is local. So he was a traditional man, and, you know, all the things that had happened till the independence, he never, ever thought, even in his memoirs and what have you, had any inclination of wanting to rule Nigeria. All he was doing was to be a good citizen of Nigeria and, I mean, help in the independence of Nigeria. But as fate will have it, he became the prime minister. And, you know, history has It is there in history. He's done his best in trying to bring about unity in the country, particularly across all the divides. Mind you, then was a parliamentary system where the regions were the almighty regions and powerful. It was only the police, the internal affairs, and perhaps the foreign affairs that was more or less of the federal domain. But still, he brought in almost everybody on board, carried everyone along. And he did what he could. Well, Nigeria today seems to be a little quite different. People wonder. I wonder when we were in regions, Nigeria was even much easier to manage and govern than now that we are all one unitary system where states pervade. But yet, the diversity in us is almost tearing us apart, which ought to have brought us, bring us together. So I think, yes.
I mean, I want to be able. You are a public affairs analyst. At least that's what you do right now. So let's analyze our public just for a little bit. A lot of things have happened in the past few weeks. We had the media chat of the president. We've seen the security situation in parts of the country. The removal of the ban on mining in Zamfara. We saw the stampede in places just before Christmas. So let's get your views on a few of these issues and your thoughts on how governance was done in 2024. We saw the president scoring himself excellent. Should he have done that? Where do you stand when you look at our public and you analyze everything that's going on?
Well, let me start with security. To some extent, I would love to give them some kudos. Yeah, getting down, and the military are up on it. We are beginning to see some signs that normalcy is returning even in those black areas, which is a good sign. Of course, Boko Haram has been degraded for some time now, and even the Niger Delta and the IPOP thing really being nipped to the bud. Well, as for the budget, it's beginning to unravel now. We are seeing the details. It's just becoming public. We are seeing some details. And I would love to see a robust National Assembly this time around. Unfortunately, the 2023 budget was all executed to about only 30%, which is very poor. 2023 budget. 2023, 2024 budget. 2025 budget, we want to see some little move to say 60, 70, they can go 95. And they all have to come together. I don't know why the president is scoring himself high. It could be on security. If that is it, fine. But on the budget performance, very poor, 30%. And well, you talked about the mining. Well, like I said, the security situation is improving. But mind you, a lot of people believe that most of the root causes of this banditry and kidnapping are associated with that mining businesses that's going on around those places. Sadly, it could be true. You know, I hope the government had really thought about that before. They should have nipped that on the bud, make sure that all these mining issues going on, they are under the purview or under the full grasp of the government. Otherwise, foreigners will come and keep bringing in arms and chasing people out. Because to some extent, it's just about chasing people from their land so that you can mine. Those things must be looked at seriously. The stampede, you can see, oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. A blessed country like Nigeria and people are running for food, you can't have food to eat. It's so sad. Leaders must sit up. It's not about giving rights, no. Not at all. Finding ways to make people be useful. employ in government, open businesses, and what have you. Let people earn. That's the way. Of course, palliatives are coming here and there. People need palliatives anywhere in the world. There are food banks, food whatever you call them in other lands in the world. But in Nigeria, it's not just only the hunger, but there's poverty as well. And leaders must sit up, particularly this government, must sit up to see how they can cushion this poverty. There's so much poverty in the land. We haven't seen more of these campaigns. Of course, they are happening in so many places quietly, but because the media haven't carried it. But you see people during festivities, you see people lining in politicians' houses to collect 5 kg, 10 kg of rice. It's not good. Nigeria, the common board, they're all Cameroon. You don't see things like that. They're what's up with us? We're a rich country, for God's sake. Things need to be done better. And I will expect better from them. Yes.
I want to come back to you before I move to Lagos, Azubike Alvan Ikoku. Let's take a look. He touched on a few things, but I want to get your thoughts on governance. At least with the Tinubu administration coming in, I know that you work in NIMC. I know that you are part of government, but you know, are we in the right direction? Are we moving in the right direction? And is this the kind of government that will take us to where we want to? And maybe borrow a few thoughts from your father and your grandfather. If they were looking at us right now, would they be saying, okay, yes, this is the way to go?
Okay, I'll put it this way. My perspective, governance and, okay, let me put it this way. Nigeria, over the years, has become increasingly complex. The complexities, yes, may be man-made, may be deliberate, may be to gain political advantage, but I do not think, and I include every single leader in this country since independence, I do not think any single president or head of government in this country did not or does not mean well. I personally do not think. And I don't think they dabbled into governance just for the fun of it. But perhaps some have been more overwhelmed with the complexities that they've met than others. And so governance for me requires a very intricate response, okay? Are we getting that intricate response today? The answer may be yes, but we need to step up our game, okay? If we don't, history would also not judge the present administration well. I think the present administration means well. I think the present administration also should be given the required support that it requires to succeed, okay? But they must bring solutions to the table that matches the complexity of the day. So whether the complexity pops up in security challenge, the complexity pops up in economic management, the complexity pops up in food security, that the appropriate response must be in place. And once that is in place, I think the government will be remembered for good. Thank you.
Ayo.
Thank you, Kayla. I'd like to start on a rather comical note. The two gentlemen tend to be lookalikes of their grandfathers. Mr. Alvan Ikoku, for instance, I'm looking at you on the screen talking to Kayla, and I'm looking at the 10 naira note, and I'm seeing your grandfather in a way. I don't know if that's something that you have thought about. Same for you, Mr. Tafawa Balewa. I'm seeing your face, and I'm seeing the face on our 5 naira note, and I'm wondering, I don't know, how does that feel? Let me start with you, Mr. Tafawa Balewa.
Yeah, I only heard the last part of your question.
I said, how does it feel to be your grandfather's look-alike? Because I'm looking at the 5 naira note now, and I'm seeing his face and yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't know. It's like I said earlier in the beginning, the two-way feeling.
Yeah.
One, yes, there was a good man who had lived and done his best for his country, his son. Here is me, who is seeing a different Nigeria from my own perspective. And then people.
One of the things that strikes me is, and it is something that you have said earlier, I hope you can hear me well. One of the things that strikes me is the age at which they all started to get involved in national development. They were very, very young men at the time. Compare that to what we have today. Do you think we are in any way preparing the young to be like the people who brought Nigeria to where they got?
That's the missing link. These people, Tafawa Balewa died at, I think, 54. Amadou Bello at 56. Well, a couple of them died much earlier. But they were there. They were part of the system, and they had given in their best because the energy was there, the right frame of mind was there, the anger was there, and then. But now and today, it's so different. Much younger people only come into power when the system wants to use them. In most cases. In some cases, some come early, but at the end of the day, they get done. I knew people who became governor in 1999, like Amadou Moazu at 44, Donald Duke much younger than that, and the rest of them. But it's no longer like that. I think it is because of the perpetuation of the aristocratic side of us in Nigeria. That's why you become a member of the State House or National Assembly, minister, governor, senator, and eventually, if you know your way, you become president. So you can see you've been dominating almost all the cycles and systems before you get to the top. So there's really no chance or opportunity for much younger ones to come along and showcase themselves. And I bet you, check every Nigerian leader that had done well in this country, you must see that age is also on his side because he's up and doing. You don't take nonsense.
Absolutely.
But if you are a bit much, you tend to rely on people to do so many things for you. And unfortunately, in Nigeria, there are too many sharp people who take advantage of situations and authorities given to them and eventually do wrong things. Like,
let me rephrase. Just a second. I'd like to take your friend, if you don't mind. Let me rephrase that question to Mr. Alvan Ikoku, sitting right there with Kayla, my colleague, in our Abuja studio. What do you think should be the entry point or path for young people in governance? Kayla already let it out that you are serving in government at one level right now. If you could, what would you recommend, or how, as the entry point for young people to get into government? Because ultimately they're going to get there, and if they don't start to intern to learn now how to do things, how to run government at whatever level, it might be a little difficult going forward. So, what would be your recommendation of an entry point for young people, for the young people, and for the people who will let them in?
Thank you very much, Ayo, for that question. I deem it a very excellent one. But you're not going to catch me on that. I'm not going to give any recommendation as in the minimum benchmark by way of age in entering politics. Rather, I will give the nation a charge, to conscientize the young people, okay? If you look at our schools and the curriculum, especially history, civics, and all of that, how well is it being taught? How seriously is that being taken? I think those are the avenues that would lead to a proper preparation and conscientization of the young people. Maturity, everyone would not get mature at the same time. It would vary from person to person. And I need to change and put something on the table again to change an impression that we have a notion that we have in this country that I don't think is right. Okay? Yes, the highest office of the land may be that of the President, Commander-in-Chief. Everyone cannot be President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It will only be one person at every given point in time. It's good for people to have aspirations. It's good for every Nigerian to have aspirations if they so wish, you know, but wherever you find yourself, whether it's in the public service like I am now, or in the legislative arm, whether it's the state or local government or the federal legislature, for goodness sake, I think you should give it your best shot, based on your level or depth of preparation, you know. So I would not certainly be on air or even in private and begin to dwell in extreme remarks about the government of the day because it is personalized to perhaps the personal personality of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. No, I'm not going to do that because I'm also in government. So how well have I led my little department in the National Identity Management Commission? That matters a great deal, okay? And it's only when I have proved my mettle at that level, no matter how little, that, of course, even without marketing myself consciously, that people say, oh, he did well when he had this level of responsibility. Perhaps we should try him for the next, okay? And it goes on and on. So our forebears, of course, proved their mettle at a very early stage. And as such, when the opportunity came, they were able to move on to the next level.
It's
and
that proof,
how well they did,
it's that
of course,
proof. My apologies, Mr. Alvan Ikoku. Is that proof that I'm looking at giving the opportunities for young people about? Because if they don't have the opportunity to prove themselves, then they're never going to be able to do it. So that's the entry level, that's the entry point that I'm talking about. Because if they don't, there are many of them, countless. I mean, you look at our movie industry, you look at our video, music industry, you look at the entertainment industry in general, you see that they are proving themselves. But that is not governance. So that's the question that I'm asking. How do we give them that opening to be able to at least prove what they can do?
The country should be about creating the enabling environment. Do we have an enabling environment in every single sector, in every facet of the economy? If the answer is no, then our work is well cut out. And we should, of course, go to work in trying to ensure that that enabling environment is there. If we are still stuck in perhaps hunger, if we are still stuck in criminality, then we need to rethink, okay? And just go about creating that enabling environment. I think if that enabling environment were in place, many young people would thrive, okay? Many young people would thrive. And it would only mean that when the future eventually comes, that it would be tough to choose amongst, you know, either young people or people who've come of age who have presented themselves either for governance, you know, because they would have a very rich repository, a very rich background that they've had to actually prove themselves. They could prove themselves in the business world, they could prove themselves in agriculture, you just name it, okay? So it mustn't be about it mustn't be about jumping into the fray and you just want to be a local government chairman or a governor. What credentials do you bring to the table? What have you done before now? Okay, that matters a great deal.
Absolutely. So let me take this to Mr. Tafawa Balewa, who joined us virtually. Is there a way to prepare? I mean, maybe you want to speak about your own experience. Well, Mr. Alvan Ikoku is in government, and you are a public affairs, you know, discussant. Is there a way to prepare young people? Is there a way you were prepared, for instance? I mean, your father led the country. Is there a way you were prepared for what you are doing now, for governance at any level? Did you get any opportunity to be opened up to knowing some of the things that you know now about Nigeria that could give you an opportunity to lead?
audio. Yeah, there's a problem with your audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think I don't.
Okay. I'm asking if you think if there was ever an opportunity for you to learn, to be mentored at home, or got an opportunity as a grandchild of a nationalist to lead the country. Was there an opportunity like that for you? Was there a preparation for you to be in government?
Somehow, I still hear you very well, but you seem to ask me if I had or have.
I'm struggling to hear you, Mr. Tafawa Balewa. If you can, okay. Okay, can you hear me well now? Okay, I'm not sure that the connection is quite good. Maybe we'll want to work on that very quickly. But Mr. Alvan Ikoku, if you can take on that same question, was there a mentoring system for you when you were younger that, okay, you're going to be, because your father led the country at one level or the other, there is a mentoring program for you as a grandchild?
Yes, my dad did expose me as much as possible. He wasn't restrictive in any way in what I read. He encouraged me to be versatile, to read as much books as I really desired to. And he was himself a good collector of books, you know, ranging from from very communist and socialist books and all of that. There were so much in his study, you know, and they looked quite fancy at the time. And I took a lot of interest in dissecting some of those volumes, you know. But that was me. I also had siblings who showed other interests, and encouraged them along the path of the interest that they had shown. So yes, there can be a conscious mentoring process by parents. There can be a conscious mentoring process by teachers, you know, from the very basic education level, elementary schools. There can be that molding process, okay? And we shouldn't be wary of that in any way. So yes, is a capital yes will be an answer.
I mean, I wish you went into politics. Same thing with Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa. I wish you went into politics.
But why would you wish such a thing?
I don't know, because of the kind of people your forebearers were, you know. It'll be, I understand, you don't have to, you can make impact in your little, in whatever ways. It would have been something, though, to see. And I noticed that a lot with people who are descendants of these great men, you know, not wanting to go into politics, carrying that burden. And of course, I'm sure a lot of people do that when they look at you and Mr. Billy as well. Looking at you, maybe why don't you go into politics? Your father was an education, or especially Mr. Billy. I'm sure that your father was prime minister of this country. Why are you not into politics? I'll give you a chance each to answer that. But add to that this particular question, which has to do with the legacy and Nigeria's preservation of the legacy of your grandfather and Billy's grandfather as well. I mean, at least I watched Shashore's documentary, Journey of an African Colony, and I remember how he at least in his own way, was able to preserve that legacy. Would you say Nigeria has done enough to preserve the legacy of your grandfather? I'll start with you, Mr. Alvan Ikoku.
Well, I'm one who believes that we can always do more, okay? Lest we begin to celebrate ourselves and think we've done all we possibly can do, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for more. And there are many more nationalists and statesmen who also deserve a preservation of their legacies. Some sing unsung, okay? They were probably didn't bubble up to the limelight and all of that. They should be fished out and immortalized as much as possible. So is Nigeria doing enough? Maybe not, okay, in immortalizing and preserving legacies and all of that. We can certainly do more. And not so much about or for my grandpa, but for many more Nigerians there who may not have gotten the opportunity for their legacies to also be immortalized or celebrated.
Mr. Tafawa Balewa, same question.
Yeah, well, back to Chris, I didn't get you the other question to ask me from Lagos. I'm already in politics, you know, but not the politics of political office, like you just said. It's so unfortunate about Nigeria's unity. It's so unfortunate that now activism and opposition is becoming so stifled and strangled. It's part of politics. Activism, if we miss activism, we'll never get it there. If we miss opposition, or we stifle opposition, or kill opposition, it's still not going to be well with us. So in my own little way, I've been into politics. I'm still into politics. I do a lot of things and support people who we share the same values and what have you. Now back to the same issue. Yes, I think Nigeria is a work in progress, and I believe one day we'll get there. But we have to, leaders now, if they want that to happen, they need to bring in together all the people. Nigeria is more divided than it was in the 60s, which is so unfortunate. I can't imagine. You know, even though, yes, we have a lot of fault lines, there's so much diversity in culture, in religion, even in economics. There's so much diversity in Nigeria, but we need a leader who will now use that diversity and make Nigeria great, the great that we anticipate it to be from the 60s to date. It can be done.
I want you to answer that question. I need to hear your answer. I heard Alvan Ikoku's answer. I want yours. Do you think your grandfather's legacy was properly celebrated and preserved by Nigerians, by successive governments after he passed?
Well, more needs to be done, but I think it's, like I said, it's a work in progress. All Nigerian leaders, I've never seen a bad one amongst them. They all came with the right intention. But unfortunately, the followership are the ones that are too many smart people who make mess of leaders who come with good intentions and what have you. But I think more can be done. And if you don't support the legacies of leaders past, yours can never be supported as well. So leaders should see to it that they make sure that, and like I said, all the leaders from Tafawa Balewa to today, they all came with good intentions. They only need to be
I'm afraid that's where we have to wrap it up this morning. I want to have a longer conversation, but I don't have the time. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Billy Tafawa Balewa, Public Affairs Analyst and grandchild of Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, Nigeria's first and only Prime Minister. Thank you for joining us on the program, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy Christmas and Merry New Year. Thank you.
And of course, Mr. Azubike Alvan Ikoku, Head of Strategy and Programs for NIMSI and grandchild of the great Alvan Ikoku. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you, Ayo, for having me on Sunrise Daily. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We've got business coming up and more conversation afterwards. Stay with us.
That's right, it's time to do business. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We do business for just about 30 minutes before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. Start from the global space. Well, markets are open today. Oil prices were a little changed on Friday, but we're set for a weekly rise, and optimism economic stimulus efforts will prompt a recovery in China, which is the world's biggest importer. Now, Brent futures fell 1 cent to $73.25 this day, and then we saw WTI on the opposite side, 0.2% up at $69.60 a barrel, losing the $70. The last time we looked at the oil numbers, we saw that WTI had gone up to $70. Now it's lost down. Now the World Bank on Thursday raised its forecast for China's economic growth in 2024 and 2025, but warned that subdued household and business confidence, along with headwinds in the property sector, would keep weighing it down next year. China has also revised upward the size of its economy by 2.7%, but said that the change would have a little impact on growth in 2024 as policymakers pledge more stimulus to spur expansion next year, 2025. Chinese authorities have agreed to issue 3 trillion yuan, that's about $411 billion worth of special treasury bonds next year as Beijing ramps up fiscal stimulus to revive an economy that has been called faltering. Now, we know that the Naira did not trade yesterday in the official market, but of course activities were going on. But this is where we left it on the 24th, 1,538 Naira 57 kobo, having lost 0.19%. On NAFEX, it was a bit of a gain, but I guess the more interesting market this morning that you may be looking at will be the parallel market. The parallel market where we saw that Naira had hit about 1,006 all through the holiday because, I mean, activities have been going on there. BDCs have been busy, so we've seen a little bit of depreciation in the parallel market. At the close of trade today, we will see what happens in the official market. Now, one of the take-homes or take-over that will take into 2025 will be the issue of the tax reform. That talk is still on, it's not yet concluded. Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State is expressing opposition to that federal government's tax reform bill, calling it a divisive policy that benefits only one section of the country. The governor stated this during the Christmas homage by the Bauchi State chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria. This happened at the government house in Bauchi.
The leadership of the Bauchi State chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria is paying the traditional Christmas homage to Governor Bala Mohammed of Bauchi State at the Government House Arena. Former Governor of Kaduna State, Mr. Ahmed Makarfi, is attending as a special guest. Cultural groups were on ground to entertain the guests, as well as prayers of gratitude, development, and good governance.
I stand to tell Your Excellency, we are with you. Wherever you go in politics, we are going to follow you. Because you have done us well by accepting us the way we are.
The governor did not hide his emotions as he bears his mind on some of the federal government's policies, especially the contentious tax reform bills.
And I must change. And that's why the presidency must listen to the tax reform. It is not a good policy for northern Nigeria because we are not going to get money to pay you salaries, to do roads. They must listen.
Prior to this gathering, the leadership of the association had paid a courtesy visit to the governor at the council chamber.
And they lost their lives.
In honor of those who lost their lives in the recent stampedes, Governor Mohammed calls for a minute's silence.
May their soul rest in peace.
He urges them to pray for the nation's leaders.
It is not time for blame or blame game. As Christian and religious leaders, I urge you to go back to God, to pray for the country and pray for us.
Highlight of the event is the presentation of a commendation letter from the national leadership of the association alongside other awards in recognition of the governor's leadership. Hajara Aliyu, Channels Television News.
So that is one issue that will spill over to 2025. That's the tax reform. The other issue that we will be taking with us in Nigeria to the new year is the budget. We know that currently, while the lawmakers are on recess, but I think committees are meeting to deliberate on sections of the budget, and perhaps they will be able to have it passed as proposed or by the end of the year. We have a couple of days left. Now, the expenditure for that proposal of the appropriation bill is at 49.7 trillion naira. Revenue expected 34.82, so of course that leaves deficit of about 13.1 trillion naira. The highest allocation goes to defense and security, more than 4 trillion naira. But this morning we're looking at the social services, that's health and education. So health has 2.48 trillion naira, while education is 3.52 trillion naira. Now let's find out how expectant players in the industry, in that sector, social services, especially health, what they think about this and how best we can use this amount that has been allocated to both health and education. I think that's a combination of almost 6 trillion naira. We have to discuss this. The chairman, Save a Life Group, Dr. Richard Okoye, joins us virtually from Port Harcourt, South Nigeria. Dr. Okoye, good morning and welcome to the program.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. So are you happy with these numbers that we have? 2.48 trillion naira for health, 3.52 trillion naira for education. Combined, we have almost 6 trillion naira for the social services sector. Are you happy with the numbers?
Yeah, currently we can say that we appreciate Mr. President for at least when he talks about figuratively and in volume, that seems to be the highest given to the health sector. But if you also look at it relatively, it still falls within the usual, unquote, status quo of between 4 and 6.1% of the budget, and which all fall below the 2001 Accord, which actually recommended 15% to healthcare sector. But beyond that aspect is also the aspect that has to do with how is this budget, being implemented over this period of time. You find out that if you look at the breakdown of the budget, particularly in the past 10 years, you find out our recurrent expenditures used to consume the more, and our capital expenditure tend to center on the aspect that has to do with, now I'm talking about health sector because little on that particular education, but health sector, you talk about the issue of building infrastructure, renovation, the issue of utility, mobilization and all that. But the primary individual that is actually to drive this very engagement is being neglected over these years. And that's why it seems as if our healthcare system has been suffering despite the money and the volume of money almost always been budgeted. And I put it this way, that when it has to do with healthcare, healthcare is not infrastructure as we normally think about it. It's not about equipment. Because if you talk about infrastructure versus equipment, I give it to the current Senate President, Senator Akpabio. He built a born specialist hospital, which ought to have been said to be the center of medical tourism. It never worked out as he anticipated, because the issue that has to do with healthcare is a person. And who is that very person? Let's not take it in the ground of professional nepotism, but a doctor is who determines whether a place can be called a hospital or health center. The maximum you can call a huge infrastructure without a doctor is a maternity. In that particular regard, therefore, it becomes imperative for us to know that, yes, all those things we do are essential, but woman capacity, which unfortunately we are not only not paying attention to them, we are losing them. And the doctors leaving the country, all the other health workers likewise, and it appearing to be normal to us. It's quite a tragedy that is in the making. I put it something very clear that will be able to help us if there be need for supplementary budget. I heard the Honorable Minister for State and Salako actually pointing out that the money has to do for mobilization or employment of more doctors and other things. And I asked myself a question, where are the doctors that will be employed? On the 15th of October, 2024, University of Benin Teaching Hospital actually called for interview for doctors. And do you know that this can be fact-checked because the CMD actually was there and can even be reached? In that department that used to be O&G, that obstetric and gynae, you used to have up to 100 doctors that can even apply. Only 4 doctors came for that interview. There was none, not one, in pediatrics, 12 of them in surgery. Now, a number of them don't even have primaries. And do you know the implication of this? The implication is that when you talk about life expectancy of any nation, is boiled down to mother and child. Now, the pediatrics is 0. O&G, which of course told to take care, they are not available. The professors we have today and senior consultants we have, they are in different universities doing the work of a house officer, of a reg. 6 years down the line, and going to about maximum of 10 years, the current set of professors and the senior consultant will be out of the system. Who actually get those things done? Recently, we also proposed, let us get more medical students. So practically most of our schools are now doubling their intake. But who trained those people? If we don't do something in the aspect of understanding that very foundation, it discovered that at the end of the day, we will churn out a lot of certified and licensed murderers, because medicine is not just a bookwork, it is something that has to be practically applied. Our budget, unfortunately, has been centered on the issue of contracts. The 2.4 trillion is huge money in the sight of anybody looking at it. And what do we normally spend on? We're gonna buy a medical equipment. The person who is gonna use this medical equipment, no budget to train such individual to be able to, at least even if it's an upgrade. And at the end of the day, budget will make a contractor will supply equipment, and the doctors on ground or people that will use it have no clue about how this. They will say, no, you know, let's say tell you how this is being used. As soon as they get into that first touch, it is done. The machine is done. So we don't see, it's not a problem of equipment that is our problem in healthcare here. If you get to most teaching hospitals in Nigeria, friend, you're gonna get a lot of sophisticated, I don't want to undermine that, sophisticated, very good equipment, but all of them are down. It is not a function of you having equipment, it's not a function of you having a hospital, you build one gigantic place. Emphasis should be given to that particular dimension, which is the core person driving this. Otherwise, millennial development goal, we failed in it, and now we have universal health coverage 2030, 5 years away. What exactly is our position? So that's why I want to bring attention of the National Assembly, as I'm going to deliberate on this, to consider the issue that has to do with empowerment. How do we secure the ones we have currently? It's a very big task, because even if you have more doctors, more medical students, as soon as they are graduating, they are following the same path. We must find a solution, and that's why we have been able to, in line with the committee recommendation of technology, to be able to make the universal health coverage, which says that healthcare should be available and accessible and affordable to all and sundry. But those in rural communities, the impediment they also pointed out.
All right, Dr. Okoye.
Have been able to attend to, yeah.
So, Dr. Okoye, from what you're saying, it does sound, the picture is bleak, unfortunately. So, do you think that the focus or the priority now should be getting those who have left? We know the Japa syndrome is a major one that's dealt with us, has put us in this condition. Or do you think that we should look into university teaching hospitals, but, I mean, as you noted, who's also training them? Which way do we look as a way forward?
Yeah, in terms of the way forward, one thing is that poverty makes you to lose friends. When you are rich, you get more friends. Any country that is that suffered economic depravity, we lose essentials. That's why most poor people have brain drain. We can't change it as it were. But one of the things I can tell you is that from my study of doctors, they are not too ambitious. A doctor who uses his brain and is mobile, fundamentally, if we could be able to make basic needs of life being met, I can tell you 30% of most of the people that are there can come back to Nigeria. So that I have a number of them. I brought some people down here also. So I have a clear understanding that something could be done in that particular way. But it's not an easy task because our economy and our naira is not competitive. Contrary to what we used to know before, that a doctor may be in Nigeria, doesn't know what's going on in the United States. But here you can be in a village and know how much a doctor is being paid in New York. Be that as it may, we may not pursue that. Mr. President came up with something that you passionately call it renewed hope budget, and also emphasize on even pharmaceuticals to be able to reach out to those people. But to solve this very problem, as Millennium Development Committee actually, Universal Health Coverage Committee actually recommended, is technology. This we have been able to build, that we have succeeded in digitalizing or downloading the brain of a medical doctor, the brain of a nurse, of life scientists, and also of the pharmacist. Why do we do that? In a place where there is no doctor, what do we do? And how did we achieve it? I started that very project in US in 2016. It was said that there's nothing anybody to give because the data is not available because doctors' terminology is usually very complex. And what did we do? We, first of all, most terminologies in healthcare, we bring it down to the common man's language. And we took off that very issue that if a patient has a problem of fever, we ask you those questions in your own language. We even made the languages of native language of Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo. But how does it happen? Like what I do right now, Save a Life Port Harcourt is the first fully digitalized hospital currently. How do we achieve it? The patient can be in position to book an appointment and answer those questions. Doctor ought to ask. He will not miss any of those ones so that not to make a wrong diagnosis or misdiagnosis. When he answers those questions in their own language, they send it in. A doctor can see it. So the question can be, Madam, you say you have fever. You vomited 3 times. You stood this. Yes, no. If the doctor confirms it, the system helps the doctor to make the differential diagnosis. It helps the doctor to be able to find investigation where applicable to ask for this patient. If there are drugs, it could also be able to help out to tell the doctor, this is what is international standard of practice that is obtainable. So the doctor it guides the doctor. That is the first EMR in the world that helps the doctor to do the right thing rather than just giving to the doctor to do whatever he wants to do.
All right, Dr.
So for
Okoye.
the rural communities, which is quite critical, for those in rural communities, there is impediment. No doctor there, no power, internet availability, and that's one of the key things we have done. Today we have computer, it's a personalized computer, customized. We design it with a SIM card technology. We discovered that most of the telecommunication companies, NTN, Glo, and all that, they've gone to most of our rural communities. So we design a computer that uses SIM card rather than waiting for internet and all those kind of stuff. So with those people there, in a community where there is no doctor, no problem, they could answer those questions that are of professional. Once they answer it in their language and send to a doctor in the city, the doctor can, if possible now, telemedicine is to ask the question, he say you have this, you have this. The doctor can send the drugs to the, what we call local chemist or pharmacy over there. People in that community can buy the drugs, take it, and we can review. We use it for pregnant women. If you have a look at this thing you see here, is one of our products. It's a BP apparatus. It has a SIM card. It has also a battery that can last up to 1 month. You don't need to recharge the battery. So those ones in rural community, as they take their BP over there, we can see in the city. For a woman that have issue of hypertension in pregnancy, like preeclampsia, and all those things, we will allow them to die because no doctor, and treatment of such is a multidisciplinary. So when they check their BP over there, a doctor in the city can see on time and can be in position to help her.
All right, Dr. Okoye. All right, Dr. Okoye. Yeah, well, that sounds beautiful, and we do hope that really, you know, it can get, especially to the rural dwellers, because those in the city, they have access to not even the primary but secondary facilities all around, but the problem actually comes from the rural, and that's where the issue of life expectancy and all of that also comes in. But thank you so much for your time, Chairman, Save a Life Group, Dr. Richard Okoye, and well, we wish you the best.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So another issue that Nigerians will have to carry over to 2025 is unemployment. It remains a key topic for conversation in the country, especially following the recent report from the National Bureau of Statistics that says that unemployment rate stood at 4.3%. That's for the second quarter of the year. Remembering that this is following, you know, the new analysis system which the NBS has adopted. In this report, we will bring you labor experts and economists to analyze government's policies and make recommendations on what needs to be done to reverse the trend in 2025.
Nigeria's population has continued to grow in the last 1 decade from an estimated 179.4 million in 2014 to 234.9 million in 2024. That's according to reports by the National Population Commission. Along with this population growth are growing economic challenges such as unemployment. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's unemployment rate in the second quarter of 2024 stood at 4.3%. Youth unemployment in the first quarter of 2024 was 12.68 million, representing 8.4%.
You understand?
However, government maintains that efforts are being made to address the challenges.
We cannot pretend about the fact that youth unemployment remains high. The president is poised and committed to not only tackling the symptoms of joblessness, but also addressing its root causes.
The federal government is also hoping that the 2025 budget, which plans to strengthen the agriculture sector, will contribute to addressing the country's unemployment challenge. However, our conversation with Mr. Festus Osifo, President of the Trade Union Congress, and Steve Nwachukwu, who is an economist, highlight other key options to addressing the problem of unemployment and turn the economy around in 2025.
Our advice to government is that, one, they have to redouble their effort. They have to, all the policies that they have been championing and talking about, it shouldn't be on paper. They should see how does these high-level policies affect the micro economy of Nigerians, because that is what affects me and you. So how does their macroeconomy policies affect the micro? And at the end of the day, they must design systems that will ameliorate this suffering.
Let's have hope that, yes, based on those budget line items, like to ask the capital component, which is more than 16 or 15 trillion voted in the capital components of the budget, if that is well executed, deals with the issue of bad roads, deals with the issue of the infrastructures that we need to drive the required growth, yes, job will be created.
Nigeria's high unemployment rate is attributed to a number of of factors, including the lack of job opportunities in the formal sector and a decline in economic growth. Challenges Nigerians are hoping will be addressed in 2025.
A lot of things are being expected in 2025, but I think you speak to a lot of Nigerians, or some Nigerians I have spoken to at this time. It seems optimistic, and I think one element that has brought that optimism is the price of petrol, which we've seen reduced unexpectedly. Well, we hope to see better days in 2025, and we're here on the business team on Channels Television to always keep you abreast of what's going on and the policies. We'll continue to do it and do it even better in 2025, God willing. Why am I talking like this? We still have some days in 2024. Well, I'll take a break now. I'll see you at 1 p.m. as I hand you back to Kayla and Ayo for Business Sunrise Daily. See you at 1 p.m.
Incidentally, you're not too far from the truth. It's still business. Even though you just finished business morning on Sunrise Daily, the realities of the business climate over the past 1 year, has been here and there, depending on who is in business. And two gentlemen joined us this morning to talk about the business climate in the environment in the year 2024, and perhaps even some kind of forecast into what to expect, given all of the reforms going on and the way it's affecting business and all of that. Mr. Adeyemi Adeniji joins us here this morning. He is the CEO of Starlink Global Limited, a major cocoa exporter. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
And we also will be having Mr. Wole Ogundare join us later on the program this morning. He is an economic policy expert. So, to have a quick one on this, general understanding. Okay, well, he has joined us already. Mr. Wole Ogundare, good morning and thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let me begin with you, Mr. Adeniji. Looking at the policies of government, the ease of doing business and all of that, what is your general take on how the year 2024 has been?
The year has been very difficult, tough for everybody, and is premised on the policy of the government, because when this government came into power, there were a lot of hopes from the business community, thinking that the president himself has claimed that he was a business person. He's going to be business friendly. And the expectation was very high, especially when he came up with two major policies, scrapping of the fuel subsidy and liberalization of the FX market. Because FX market has a chain of reaction. When it was, the pronouncement was very good, was a welcome thing, but up till now, both CBN and government policies have not aligned. This policy somersault or non-alignment of these policies has drastically and negatively affected the business. You still have today exchange rate, disparity in exchange rate. You have the official rate and you still have the black market rate, still very wide apart. It makes a short-term planning very, very difficult, not to talk about long-term planning. So this instability is seriously has affected the business of export, where I play in, and very negative on it.
Well, I'm sure that Mr. Wole Ogundare will have his own perspectives on this. Looking at it from the perspective or the angle of policies, of reforms, which no doubt has had an effect on everyone and everything, from the highest and mightiest to the meekest and lowliest in the country. How would you assess, what is your assessment of the general business climate in the country in the year 2024?
Thank you very much for having me this morning. I think even though the audio is poor, I think I made out a bit of the things that was being said in the studio. In terms of my own general assessment, I'm looking at it from two areas. One, the government policy, which my colleague in the studio there mentioned, and then the ease of doing business. You can look at the government policies, from several areas, what worked, what didn't work, and what we need to do in 2025 in that same manner. If you look at our investment climate, if we're looking at government policies and our investment climate, my colleague there mentioned fuel subsidy removal. This was aimed to improve and free up resources for infrastructure, social investment, etc., as well as ensure we have sort of some sustained long-term fiscal spend. That hasn't happened. Exchange rate unification as well. We've created a transparent forex market, so that has worked. But we haven't been able to actually use it to invest the foreign investment we require. As you know, dollar is still a scarce commodity. There's been an investment in roads, rail, and some port investment as well as some sectoral reforms in tech, fintech. For me, those are some of the things that, have worked in 2024 so far. What didn't work? For me, inflationary pressures. The subsidy removal, forex unification has led to this sharp price increases. So if you look at your daily consumer purchasing power, it's been highly eroded. And then again, my colleague there in the studio mentioned something which I'm very big on in terms of a clear lack of communication around, one, the reforms, and two, the policies. Regarding subsidy palliatives, fiscal management, all of those things are still up in the air, and the common man is suffering from this. I think another thing that hasn't worked is the tax and regulatory all sorts of policy shifts and somersault, around taxes on businesses. Again, these are things which discourage investment, in my view, particularly around SMEs, who we know are the driving force of this economy. Let me stop there for now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, back to you, Mr. Adenichi. Of course, you've heard some of the things that he has talked about. Is it a problem? Did you see it coming? The evolution of business, the way it's been? Because from what the president has said and a number of other economists have spoken about, is that, look, we were living on borrowed time as a nation. A number of things that should have been done hadn't been done for many, many years. And now those issues, those decisions have become auspicious. There are decisions that needed to be taken, actions that needed to be taken, otherwise things are going to get way worse, way quicker than we imagined. Did you see this kind of upheavals coming and the way it will affect business?
Oh yeah, we expected it. But what we expected more is the policymakers to first do their homework properly and look at how it will affect so many of the businesses, how it will affect Nigerians. There are good policies with very good intention, but the implementation is a bit difficult. Let me give you an example. When you have disparity in exchange rate, somebody goes to the market and he can exchange his money at 1,650. An exporter brings in his money, which is bigger volume, and is forced to sell it to bank at 1,530. And the two of them are going to compete with the same commodity in the farm. So the other one is at disadvantage. So if there's alignment of this black market and the official market, such that the difference is minimal, it makes planning very easy.
But isn't it a little minimal now? Because the disparity was quite huge before now.
It's the same, it's just the same, just a little bit, because where the more volume comes into is from the exporter to the bank. Even today, there's no transparency in what the banks are doing. The CBN, it's only the CBN and the bank that will tell us this is what the rate is. It's not that there's any platform that is open to other people except the bank and the CBN that knows what the rate is.
Okay, quick. Let me take Mr. Ogundare's comments quickly on that exchange rate bit, because on the one hand, I mean, you are not unaware of the disparity between the black market and the regular market until recently, and then that intervention of the CBN trying to ensure that all these round tripping are nipped in the bud, and the way it is affecting business, from what Mr. Adeniji has said.
Mr. Adeniji is very correct. As long as we don't have a stable rate, remember, a lot of people will typically tell you that, look, even if it is going to be 2,000, let us know that it is stable at 2,000. As long as we have that up and down, planning, and Nigeria is a very, very import-dependent economy. Planning for a lot of businesses, and I work with quite a few of them, is usually very, very difficult. So they're almost on a daily basis, talking to somebody in the bank, talking to somebody in the black market, trying to find out what those rates are, and what is best for planning, what is best for importing. Let me give you a classic example. If you're going to quote, for a customer, and you are importing the thing, you've quoted at maybe 1,650, and all of a sudden, a few weeks later, when your commodity is in, the things have gone to 1,700. Who pays the 15 naira difference across a huge amount? So for me, that is where the problem is. The lack of stability is a major, major problem. And, some of us know why there is a lack of stability. It's simple. We're not generating enough in terms of earnings as a country. But that's a different topic for another day.
Well, it is a related...
So to give my own responses to that. Back to you.
It's a related issue. Maybe that is why it's something that is generating the kind of attention that it is generating. So back to you. You were trying to, make a point. I just wanted to clear that bit of the Forex thing. So please go ahead.
Yeah, it really nipped it on the head. That stability is needed. And transparency is also very important. From CBN, recently I was a panelist on the Bankers Committee retreat in Abuja, and one of the things that was discussed is CBN needs to come out and tell us the policy direction. Because most of the time, if you are just assuming, as exporters, you are assuming this is what the government is trying to do. You don't know what exactly they are trying to do. It makes your planning very difficult, especially for people like me that trades in some other West African countries. You see how it is being done in other places, and you come back and look at how it is being done in your country. You get more and more very irritated that simple things that doesn't need any scientific formula is as difficult as this. CBN needs to come out and tell the whole world, this is the direction we want to go. How do we align both the other market, which is the black market according to what they say, and the official market? Now the impression is now there are foreign influence into the country, and they now have a partnership with Bloomberg, and they have a very reasonable and stabilized exchange rate. It's not true, because what all exporters are saying is we have not been very transparent. CBN needs to come out and tell people this is the direction I want to go. Two, we need to generate employment. As long as we are primary product exporters, we will never get there. Because each time you export one bag of your cocoa beans of raw materials to other countries, industrialized countries, you are exporting your jobs. And the population is increasing. Unfortunately, lands is not going to give birth to more children. So definitely, we need to use what the God-given advantages we have, competitive advantage, use it for our people, and have a policy direction that will clip poverty. Get people to believe in the government, to trust the system, because it's a trust issue.
And that's a long time coming, because it's something we've been seeing. Just a quick one on what you just said now about generating employment before I throw it to Kayla. What is the hindrance from industrializing? Recently, the federal government has been welcoming of that initiative by the Africa Development Bank for special agro-industrial processing zones to create industrial parks. Do you think that would help expedite that industrialization challenge?
Sorry, I think we are putting the cart before the horse. You want to industrialize. What are the ingredients for industrialization? Power, raw materials. We have the population, we have the knowledge, we have the land. But you can look at what do we produce. The elders farmers problem we did not has limited the farmers to go to the farm. In the southwest, let me just be very specific. Nigeria has a population, Western Nigeria has a population of 62 million people. That's the former whole southwest. In the whole Nigeria, we produce 253,000 tons of cocoa every year. Ivory Coast is 33 million people. They produce 2.3 million tons of cocoa. So it was easier because it is planning. Ivory Coast, look at it, 10 years plan. Where do we want to be? They increased in 2010. Ivory Coast was producing 1,100,000 tons of cocoa per year. They wanted to industrialize. They wanted to bring in more people to come and process in their country. They want to reduce exportation of their primary products. They increased the production. They had a 10-year plan, bringing in highly yielding hybrid of cocoa, and they started to plant. So that the volume per hectare has increased using technology. They partner with USAID that gave them, we have crane in Nigeria, which can be done. They now started producing 2.3 million tons. And they insisted, if you want to our cocoa, you must bring your factories into our country. Today, Ivory Coast processes 43% of whatever they produce. They did the same thing in cashew. But in Nigeria, we only process 10% of what we produce. And we are not even producing enough. We have the population.
That's the question I'm asking. What's the hindrance?
The hindrance is government policy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It's government policy.
Kayla.
Listening to everything both our guests have been saying, I'm beginning to worry again. But I'm going to ask Mr. Wole Ogundare this question, because you are an economic policy expert. Let's talk about the direction that the president is going in when it comes to economic recovery, this budget of restoration, and these policies. Okay, so we are where we are. This has happened. He says, I know what I'm doing. I'm heading somewhere. And I just need you to be patient with me while I do the hard things that will get us the benefits that we desire. Is this the way to go? And is there some economic reality about what the president is saying that we all just haven't quite understood yet?
Thanks a lot, Kayla. Let me start from where the problem is. There's a document called the National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan. It's online. It was prepared in 2013, updated in 2021. One of the things that document mentioned is that Nigeria's total infrastructure stock, so power, transportation, health, education, water, mining, agriculture, security, all of our total infrastructure stock. When you compare it to our GDP, it's around 30–35%. It is extremely low. And you see, I've said it in so many places that no nation on earth grows with a poor infrastructure to GDP ratio. None. China's infrastructure to GDP ratio is around 90-something%. Ours is around 30–35. That is why the ability, and you heard my colleague in the studio, the ability to be productive is challenged. Now, when the president removed fuel subsidy, the hope is that all the savings, though fictional, it just means monies we're no longer spending. All the savings will now be targeted towards infrastructure development. Let me give you a quick synopsis. Nigeria's total income today is somewhere around $20 billion US. Total income, oil, non-oil, tax, everything, $20 billion US. To start a trajectory moving us towards where we can now begin to say that, look, the infrastructure required for the growth and amelioration of all the problems we are having, to start towards that, we need about $50 billion US every year. For the first 5 years, that document is a 30-year plan I mentioned earlier. We need 50 billion per annum to even start with for 5 years. And then we step it down to about 30 billion for the remainder of the period. Tell me, where is the money? So a lot of us, why we query all the policies and all the things going on is that, look, guys, you're not looking at the bigger picture. We do not have the monies today to grow Nigeria in the direction. How do we grow the current pie? So when you see a lot of bickering going on in the oil sector, again, it's amusing because that shouldn't be where we're focusing. We should be asking, how do we grow the current pie? Again, let me mention one more thing. No nation on earth grows with its own internal revenues. No, you have to sort of let me say something again. You have to sort of create a purpose, sell that purpose internally, sell that purpose externally, and attract foreign investment. Tell me, what are we doing today as a country to attract enough foreign investment to sort of help us towards where we want to go? Like I said, we're 20 billion dollars in terms of our economy. We need 50 billion to even start in that trajectory. So the truth is this: we're not even anywhere near the starting blocks to start with, as it is today. That is the reality that people need to understand.
Speaking of investments, let me go to Mr. Deniji in Lagos studios. We have a new minister of Trade and Investments, Jumoke Oduwole, and ease of doing business. In fact, that's what we call her, Madam Ease of Doing Business. I know that you're a major exporter of cocoa. So talk to us a little bit about the ease of doing business in Nigeria, and with the prospects of a new minister. Is there hope that this ease of doing business would now be a lot even easier, seeing as Jumoke Oduwole is the person at the reign of affairs in that ministry?
Yeah, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole has been somebody I think the industry can trust. When she was the head of ease of doing business, we have a lot of confidence in her ability. Personally, she has really intervened in some crises that I had in the past, and she did very, very well. I'm not sure that she will be given the free hand to drive this new ministry, because it is not about Jumoke Oduwole now. It's about the employer. If the government gives her free hand and they give her all the support, the infrastructure, I believe strongly that she will be able to drive that ministry to a very enviable position. Immediately she became the minister, she came to Lagos, looked for the best 100 exporters in Nigeria. All of us were assembled at FII, that Civic Center, and she asked questions, and we told her and we advised that these are the direction that these things could go. And if there are disengagement from all other sectors, I think there will be a policy alignment, and then we can start to see some upward trajectory in the whole economy, especially in trade and infrastructure. There are lots of issues that we have in that the government needs to intervene. For example, today, if you export from Nigeria to China, the bilateral agreement between Nigeria and China is still not very good. It's not good enough. If we export from Nigeria, say for sesame seed, you have to pay 10% duty. But if you export from Niger, all the French-speaking countries, they waive that 10% for them. So it makes Nigerian businesses, commodities, uncompetitive. And you have a situation whereby even some of the sesame seed, Nigeria is the second largest producer of sesame seed in the world today. But most of these sesame seed are not, they don't put the origin as Nigeria, because China is the largest importer. So if you put the country of origin Nigeria, then you have to pay 10%. What do? You have to go and get the certificate of origin from Niger and use it as if these products are being produced in Nigeria, from the Niger Republic, to export it to avoid this 10% thing. The same thing if you have processed goods from Nigeria and you are sending it to Europe, you are going to pay about 5% duty, whereas from Ivory Coast, they don't pay those duties. So these are things that make Nigeria not too competitive. Those are things that we expect the new Minister of Trade to look at. Look at the incentive regime of the government. Look at the infrastructural deficiencies we have. And look at the issue of the FX, the Forex. So that once these things are aligned, people will have plan. We'll be able to plan. Without planning, in an unstable situation, people will not be able to plan on what they want to do. That's why it is difficult to industrialize.
Well, I guess we are coming to that point now where all kinds of rethinking just has to be done. I'm pretty sure that we're going to have we're going to have to sustain these conversations in the interest of our nation, because at the end of the day, it all goes back to the common man, as we say. Yes. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Mr. Adeniji is CEO of Starling Global. Thank you so much for your time, as well as Wale Ogundare, who is an economic policy expert. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this morning. So, Kayla, feedback.
I want to start by saying sorry for all the people who've been sending us messages throughout the week. We haven't been able to get to all of them, but I'll try and see if we can get to as many as possible before we close today. Let's start with this one from Jesus for the Street, Yomi_D411. He says, personally, I liken President Tinubu to the likes of Tafawa, Balewa, Olumo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, etc. All thanks to God, his antecedents and current bold reforms. He goes on there. Mr. Professor Imonoha Enakena says, the Nigeria of our dreams must emanate from curbing electoral racketeering so that the people's choice will prevail and emerge victorious, where power is available and affordable. CBN must cut our current expenditure to invest same in healthcare, education, poverty reduction programs, bring interest rates to single digits to deliberately grow the SMEs and informal sector. Thank you all so much for your messages and for being with us all through the week. It's Friday. Go out there, have a good time, but please be safe, be careful, watch out, make sure that you are security conscious, and do not overdo it. So have a great weekend ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa. I'll see you next time.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. You have a beautiful rest of your weekend.